Welcome to the Escape News Podcast. I'm your host, Chad.
And I'm your co-host, Ryan.
Thanks for joining us today. And today we're going to be talking about Tesla, both past, present, and future in a lot of ways. So I'm going to be starting off with a little bit about Tesla. I don't really want to get through like all of the history because you can watch a million YouTube videos and look up a million articles just about like what day he was born, what day he died, and all that stuff. And in fact, I'm going to tell you right here that he was born on the 10th of July in 1856 in Croatia. There you go. That's all you need to know about him as far as history is concerned. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day. No. So the interesting parts is like he kind of like left his family and just wanted to do his own thing. He lived as a hunter out in the woods at some point because he just tried to run away from like being in the military. But jumping forward to something more interesting, he actually worked for the Edison company in Paris as a installer of light fixtures and stuff. And then they saw that he was so good, they started having him work on dynamos, which like are power generators, and then just traveling Europe and fixing things before he moved to New York. And when he went to New York, he was working for Edison, and that's where like things really started happening, interesting things, because like Edison had promised him, I think it was like $1 million basically to improve his dynamo, and he built like this amazing version that didn't light on fire or spark or whatever, and was like much more efficient. And then Edison was like, "Nope, I'm not going to pay you things because they go, Americans, that's funny, haha," or something like that. So I'm like, that's American humor. You don't get the joke that I'm not going to pay you. It does kind of mean.
Yeah.
So after that, Westinghouse connected with Edison or with Tesla, and we're going to skip a few things in here. But he ended up connecting with Tesla, and they started a battle basically because Tesla was very adamant that like we need to use AC current, alternating current, because Edison was using direct current, which only can travel a short distance, but AC can travel longer distance even though it's higher voltage. And so what Edison did to like this campaign smear Edison, it was about the money and it was about like the pride and the fame and stuff more than it was actually about helping people. Which we know that now. Like we look, I remember, dude, was this like for you in high school too? Like Edison was like a good guy, but nowadays he's like the bad guy.
Yeah, they made him out to be a really good guy, and then but now that we have the internet, I mean, you can just do a pretty cursory little Google search, and you find out he electrocuted an elephant and crazy stuff like that. Like Edison was a terrible person.
Oh, dude, like yeah, I found out like he was paying 25 cents to school kids for them to catch neighbors' pets and stuff, or like kids would catch the pets of like certain people in this certain community, and then Edison would like publicly execute these animals with AC just to show like, oh, Tesla's stuff is very unsafe. Then Tesla one-ups him, and the next year or later that month, or I don't remember, it was sometime that year, went to the World Fair and held light bulbs and ran AC through his body to power the light bulbs to show that it was entirely safe. And so at that point it was like, oh well, you know, I'm just gonna hold on. Just checking my camera to make sure it's all good. And then I bumped my microphone. And so he was just showing that it was perfectly safe. And then Edison continued to run those campaigns anyways. That after that point, I think he electrocuted the elephant after that point. Yep. And he was still trying to like be crazy. So we have Tesla to thank for his motor is still used, basically a version of his motor still used in like the Tesla cars that we have nowadays. And he created, so the interesting thing is when he came up with ideas, he had these flashes of lights in his vision, and he had them throughout his whole life, and he would have entire concepts for electrical structures and things like that come to him, and he would just like stop and just like sketch it out in the dirt or something, and then just go make these things. And he said like in 20 years of having it, like earlier at some point, like every time he built what he saw, it worked perfectly. Which is kind of crazy that he was that. Yeah. So something interesting, he had an eidetic memory, which we were talking about before the show. It's like the idea to see something and to remember it, and he had it to some crazy degree. He also apparently had visions to like, you know, conjure up stuff. He had a love relationship with a pigeon in his old age. Which whole nother
like
crazy
Mike Tyson.
Yeah, like so he was like, oh, she's my love, and like I love her like a man loves a woman, and she'll come for me. And apparently when she came for, like he said, she came to me, and I saw that she knew that she was dying, and then light came from her eyes, and then she like passed away or something like that. And I was like, whoa. That's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
But so some interesting things is that like he competed with Guglielmo Guglielmo Marconi. You just remember Marconi. He's the guy who
Yeah.
started the first radio signals, cross transatlantic radio signals, and up to that point, Tesla had been JP Morgan Bank had lent him like $100,000 to build Wardenclyffe Tower, which was supposed to be like a wireless system, a telecommunications system where he could send out telecommunications, timekeeping, possibly GPS for ship tracking, and he also had the idea that you could be able to send power to the system and power out to other people. Now, some people like have this crazy conspiracy theory that he was actually like going to create free energy or something, but that just kind of came out of the blue, and that really wasn't the case.
I think they're also accusing him of like trying to create artificial earthquakes or something like that.
Oh no,
like
no, that's an actual thing.
Okay, yeah, I read something where it seemed kind of like, I don't know if it was true, but like, you know, he went several towns over, placed something on a building, and it started vibrating the building, and it was just like,
so he didn't like go and create earthquakes, but what he was doing is the resonant harmonic frequency of like the earth is what he was supposed to have tapped into. And getting into conspiracy theories is pretty crazy. I'll mention this in a second, but like he created this device that he put on a building in New York, and it was just like, it looked like a picture. When I saw the picture, it was like a little metal, like a planer, like a wood planer or something. I don't know. It looked really weird. He put it on the building, and it matched the frequency of the building, and it slowly created tremors until the point where the workers who were working on the building like came rushing down because they thought there was an earthquake. And then he just like put it in his pocket and ran away, and didn't tell him at the time. But he said that if he had a device, if he had like enough time, I don't know, a few hours, he could put it on like a bridge in Brooklyn Bridge or something like that, and take the whole bridge down and like cause it to like break apart and collapse, which actually in research did happen. At one point, a bridge with some wind that was coming by, the wind vibrated apart that matched the frequency of like the pieces that were in the material. I don't really understand the whole science behind it, but like basically it like shook until it broke the bridge apart, and it like fell apart. And there's a guy on YouTube who breaks glasses with his voice he taps the glass, and then it rings at its frequency, and then he gets his mouth up to it and like sings at it at that same frequency. And because the glass is already vibrating at that frequency, he's just empowering it, and then the glass shatters. So I'm gonna have to try that sometime.
Not with a good china.
Yeah, exactly. So this is actually, so I looked up, they were actually like finding, we found the I should have written down like the actual like frequency of cancer cells or something like that. We can like vibrate sound at or radio waves and different things at cancer cells at a particular frequency, and they know what it is now, and they can just like make those cells, or leukemia cells and different things like that, just break apart. And I was watching a video about this, like where they're breaking apart cells with just like sound. But this is a bit of a conspiracy theory because like apparently they had already figured this out back in the 1930s and 40s, but the government quickly, now this is conspiracy level stuff, I didn't look into all the accuracy of these things, but like the government came in and took all the tools that could do this, that could easily get rid of diseases or cancer, and Big Pharma is the one preventing us from doing this. I'll have to look into that a little bit more, but it's very interesting if that is a possibility. Sound waves.
That reminds me of that thing where the person who created like a fuel system that just consumed water. And like,
or air.
And like big oil, showed up and like bought them out and threatened them and that kind of thing. And I don't know how true that is, but it's just weird.
We need to look into some of these things because I'm fairly certain there's enough information out there to say like these are possible or that's happened. I saw a guy who built a combustion engine that it was a wood powered engine, like for his car, and he has a pickup truck. He chucks wood in the engine and just like burns it and like runs a combustion engine somehow. It was in a really bizarre way, but like I figure if he can do that, like I mean, there's probably some way to run it off of water.
Yeah,
not hydrogen.
Reasonable. Yeah.
But we need to look into some of these things, especially the big pharma ones, because like I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't some bit of money going around in like, I mean, after we talked about like nuclear power and stuff, there definitely seems to be some evidence that the government or big corporations are like involved in trying to, keep money for themselves. And it's just really hard because it's one of those things like, do you want men in black suits showing up at your house telling you to like, shut up or we're going to take you away?
There's too much money involved for them not to pull out all the stops.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
but most of the stuff I'm getting is from the internet. So it's already out there. And I don't know that I'm at a level unless, like, this show, hink, hink, or wink, wink, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, please subscribe or something like that. Like, if this show started making us money, then I'd have money to, like, go and start interviewing people and buying spy costumes so they don't know who I am. And, like, maybe we get to that point, and it would be really fun. I would definitely, go find people to interview in dark cells somewhere in unknown locations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I got on Tesla. Like, I just want to talk about, like, just recap who he was and a little bit about some of those interesting things. And that's more of just like a lead up to what you have, presenting some of not Tesla, like Nikolai, but Elon Musk's company Tesla and other ones that are related. Yeah,
so Elon Musk kind of took the Tesla brand, I guess you would call it, maybe, or maybe just kind of a spiritual successor to Tesla's work, and started the whole, Tesla Motor Company to make an electric car, but very much a viable one. And so I think that enough people know about the Tesla, the motor company, but there's a lot of other things that Elon Musk has done in addition to or since Tesla, and he's still working on Tesla, but, and I don't want to get into SpaceX. I think we've covered that before too. But a couple of things, battery patents was actually a really interesting one, and that didn't get nearly as much media coverage as I think it should have gotten. So one of the things that the Tesla Motor Company had really innovated was the battery technology. Now, when it comes down to it, a lot of these are just lithium cells. They just kind of, if you ever look, you can build your own lithium cells. They just take small lithium batteries and just like wrap them up and put like I think it's a nickel plate, and they just kind of TIG weld maybe the cells onto it, and you can just start making arrays of these lithium batteries. There's a lot into it, but you can watch YouTube videos of them making this stuff. It doesn't look like it's too terrible. But anyway, so they're like, they innovated a lot of this stuff and made like far more efficient battery process and far more efficient batteries and interfaces and a lot of efficiencies around using the battery to get the most out of it. And I think what was really cool is that he actually opened up or released these patents for anyone to use. And it was kind of good because it brought everyone else up to the level that Tesla had achieved to some degree. But it also made it to where, and this is kind of a problem that we've had with computers, where everyone kind of tries to make their own standard, and then they hope everyone adopts it, and then everyone just makes their own standards.
Oh, you mean like all those USB versions of what the plug interface would look like?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Right, so this is what you end up with, and so it was a really good move on his part to kind of release his patents, because now, like, a lot of these businesses they can't ignore it, right? Like, this is obviously a better design in every way than what we've got now, and it's the same interface that Tesla's using, so all of Tesla's supercharger stations would now be able to interface with all the other car manufacturers who make electric cars if they're using these battery patents and the interface patents. So that was a really cool move on Elon Musk's part to kind of do that. Another interesting thing he was working on, this is something he apparently was like kind of sketching on the back of a napkin for a while and did some stuff, but he realized he just didn't have enough time to really put towards it. And I guess whatever else he had kind of going on, he just didn't think he would ever get around to making it happen, but he felt that it was a good enough idea that he wanted other people to make it happen. And this is the Hyperloop. Which is a really cool little land transportation system that involves a massive tube, a Hyperloop, that's actually a vacuum inside of it, and they do keep a cushion of air on the front and the back of the car of the vehicles inside the tube, and so this is supposed to be able to get passengers up to like 600 miles an hour kind of thing, and then the pocket of air will elegantly slow them down when they get to their destination. But it was kind of like you can go across country or up and down the coast in just 10-15 minutes kind of thing. I forgot the actual times, but it was like less than an hour. It was really impressive. and it's very efficient, and like doesn't burn fossil fuels. It's kind of using electromagnetic, like a maglev kind of system, which is what's currently used in Japanese bullet trains and things like that. But with the vacuum tube, it cuts down on the resistance, so there's no air resistance. There's the friction is almost non-existent, kind of thing. Very interesting stuff. So what he did was he sketched the whole thing out, proved that it could be done, and then he just released it. Like he said, this is for anyone to go with. And I believe a couple weeks ago, they had a very decent prototype that actually brought like a couple of people, on a small leg of the trip on this tube that they had created, I think, in the desert somewhere. There's a couple other companies that jumped on it too to try and implement it. They had like a contest to see who could make a viable design for a Hyperloop. So that's actually kind of moving along. I'm not sure where it's going to go, that they're going to be able to make it economically feasible so that, it can make profit, that kind of thing. But it's definitely a really cool start. Could be used for mass transportation of not just humans, but just cargo and goods. Because right now we're still using like planes and trains and automobiles to kind of transport all this stuff up in like long distances. And like a Hyperloop is like a dedicated type system that could bring a lot of people on a very regular basis, across great distances. And then the most recent thing is Neuralink. Now he had kind of talked about it and hinted at different parts of it, and it was kind of really, I don't know, it was very like obscure as to what exactly it was. And some of the other topics that he would be talking about when he was talking about Neuralink had to do with using like a computer interface to greatly enhance a human's ability to interface with computers. So he was saying, if humans are going to compete with artificial intelligence, whenever that happens, they're going to need help. And so a Neuralink allows humans to kind of, they bridge that gap, like allow us to interface very naturally with a computer so that things are more fluid and more dynamic. If you think about it, like a lot of our thoughts running through our head a lot faster than we can talk, and certainly a lot faster than most of us can type. And so like this whole, using your fingers to type on a keyboard to put text on a screen is actually not very efficient. It's what's worked. But if you had Neuralink, you're just thinking things, and the stream of consciousness is just throwing text on a screen, and you're just kind of like moving through your computer at lightning speed as fast as you can think. And then you can also offload like large calculations to it. So you're just thinking like, I want the sum of these million rows, and bam, it just does it. Wow. So he was talking about stuff like that. Now, how Neuralink actually implements, I don't really know. It was like, cause he actually he had like this grand reveal of it. This was several months ago, maybe a year or so ago. But it was really weird. Have you ever seen Elon Musk like talking in person? It's awkward to hear him talk. You can tell he's got so much to say, but like there's just this barrier. Maybe it's just nervousness of public speaking. I'm not really sure.
Conferences and forums, it's just annoying that basically everybody asks him, when will AI take over the world? Are we in a simulation? They ask him the same questions every time. It's like, that must be really frustrating.
But so it's hard for him, I think, to kind of communicate that stuff really effectively, but he loves doing it. So, more power to him, I guess. But they kind of brought out like a pig that they had installed a Neuralink to. And I honestly didn't quite understand. They were pulling up like big system metrics, like here's his heart rate and here's some other things. Like, I don't understand what they're supposed to be doing. But some of the talk afterward talked about like circumventing injuries in like a spinal cord injury. So Neuralink could basically interface with the nerve endings at the brain stem and then circumvent the spinal cord injury and then allow people to walk again. So that was one of the more practical things they were kind of putting out there. Now I don't know how far along they are with that, but it seemed really interesting. Like at least that part of it. So I still feel like it's somewhat in its infancy, and I'm not totally understanding just kind of what he's talking about and what actually is available now. I'm not really sure. So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see like where all this goes. But I don't know. It seemed kind of cool. We'll see. And then oddly enough, he's been doing a lot. Like if you follow him on Twitter, he's kind of died down a little bit now. But like maybe a couple months ago, he was just posting like memes and anime cat girl type pictures and just weird stuff like that.
Well, apparently he might have COVID right now. So.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I think he would be posting more memes. But yeah, him posting all that kind of stuff I thought was kind of funny. I don't think it's something he's seriously working on, obviously, but he seems like a really fun guy to kind of hang out with. But he always seems like he's got like, I don't know how he's working like more than 24 hours a day kind of thing is what it feels like. I don't know where he gets the energy and motivation to do half that stuff. He has talked about having like breakdowns. Like there was a time where I think he had an emotional breakdown is not the term, but like he felt like everything kind of fell apart. Like he had SpaceX, he had Tesla, he had like too many irons in the fire, and he was trying to hold it all together, and he just broke down. There's a small like video or a picture of him like in a boardroom, with some people around him. It's probably late at night. He's just like you can tell he's like crying or something. Like he's just overwhelmed. Obviously he bounced back and kind of kept going, but I hope he's finding some personal time to himself.
I know. Well, so if I ever met with him, I would throw at him some very crazy ideas. It's like, what happens if you do this? Have you guys thought? I was just talking to like we had somebody over tonight, and I was just talking to him. I was like, we were talking about like boats and like solar panels to power things. And I was like, what if you could combine something with tractor beams and magnets and quantum physics, and you could just make like something you put on an object from a distance, and then like, say we need to take a ship from Japan to California, and then we just have something in California, and it just like pulls it over to here from I'm sure there's like got to be some correlated technologies in there that can do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're doing quantum keys on satellites. I don't know, maybe.
Like some kind of quantum entanglement and then compressing space-time and
I don't really
throwing things out there.
Yeah, like I know enough to like be dangerous with some of the ideas, but I don't know enough to like actually implement anything. So
yeah, the was it the Alcubierre warp drive? Have you seen that?
Oh, what is this?
It's a faster than light travel concept. I don't want to say semi-recently, but they recently figured out that it's mathematically possible to actually make this thing. So the Alcubierre, or I don't know how you pronounce it, that warp drive basically it compresses space-time in the front of the ship and expands it in the back of the ship, and kind of puts the ship itself into like the slipstream where it technically would then travel faster than light. The problem is that it requires like a ridiculous amount of energy to actually do that. And so they're kind of hoping of finding some kind of exotic element that will allow them to do that. That's as far as I got with it. But apparently they figured out that, like, from a mathematical standpoint, it's possible, but it's probably improbable.
Everything's possible, apparently, with enough power or some random exotic element.
Yeah, there we go. That's what it kind of felt like. It's like, okay, like element X, like, oh, great, this sounds like a comic book writer is kind of making this stuff up.
Oh, they have that, like, in Powder Puff Girls, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, isn't that what created them?
Yeah, like Chemical X.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Science and
I
fiction
didn't think
not
we
too
would
far
get there.
apart. Yeah. We're there. Oh, wow. It's pretty cool to see, like, that, Elon Musk is doing, he's like kind of like Tony Stark, he's just pushing the agenda, and he has like all the technology, and he's somewhat of a cool person, or like at least perceived as like really cool. And so it's pretty cool to see him do all the things like that kids were like, oh, go to Mars, or like flying cars or things like that. I don't know that he's working on flying cars, but like altogether, like it's pretty cool to see him pushing like the agenda in some areas. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. Well,
yeah, he had a cameo in Iron Man 2, actually.
Oh yeah.
At that race in Monaco or whatever. Not
yes.
Monaco, with that little that race. He kind of showed up and talked with Tony Stark, and then went and sat down.
Oh yeah, I have an idea.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said something about that. I was like, oh, I have some ideas.
I think it was actually electric cars. Now, if I remember correctly, he said something about electric car.
I wonder if he like improv that, or like, already had the idea.
Yeah.
Because I remember it was a few years ago. But hey, well, that was fun.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we'll see y'all next time on Escape News Podcast. I'm your host, Chad.
And I'm your co-host, Ryan.
And like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you guys next time.